I was telling somebody in another country the importance of not telling lies. And this man, he said, you know, I'm a salesman. I have to tell lies. And I said to him, what kind of reputation do you have? Do people trust what you say or not? Well, not really. Okay. I thought it would be kind of interesting to go through the Eightfold Path a little bit, because it's really not very well understood. And when you go through the Eightfold Path, you have right this and right that, which means there's also wrong this and wrong that. And that makes the world kind of black and white. And because of that, I've decided to change some words around a little bit so that they're easier to understand. Okay. So instead of right view, I call it harmonious perspective. What is harmonious perspective? It is seeing things without having any craving in your mind. Okay. What is craving? How are you supposed to recognize craving? How are you supposed to let craving go? Craving is tension and tightness in your head, in your mind. That's how you recognize craving. Your brain has two parts to it. There's a membrane that goes around every time you have a thought, a feeling, or sensation. The brain expands a little bit and causes tightness to arise in your head, in your mind. The craving is the I like it, I don't like it mind. I don't think that's pointing at me.
It is.
When you have a feeling arise, you have a pleasant feeling, what happens in your mind? I like that. When you have a painful feeling arise, what happens in your mind? I don't like that. The I like it, I don't like it is craving. That's how you recognize craving when it arises.
Behind him, the light is not in front of him.
So when you
He's just black.
relax and let go of that tightness in your head, in your mind, you'll notice that you don't have a lot of disturbance in your mind. Your mind is very clear, your mind is very alert, and your mind is pure. Why is it pure? Because you've let go of craving. Now, the I of I like it or I don't like it, that is the beginning of the false belief in a personal self. When you take things personally, you have a tendency to get involved with them very much. And you get highly emotional about some things. I like this, I don't like that. you said this and it made me mad, whatever it happens to be, you're taking these things personally. Harmonious perspective is seeing things in an impersonal nature. Letting go of that craving. So now you have more balance in your mind all the time. The next fold of the Eightfold Path is something that the definitions have been changing around the last few years. It used to be, they called it right thought. And now Bhikkhu Bodhi has changed that, and it's been taking off with a lot of people. And they call it right intention. But I don't like either one of those definitions, so I call this harmonious imaging. What do I mean by that? What kind of image do you hold about yourself? I'm always happy. If you hold an image of being happy, you are going to be happy. I have some friends in Missouri, they are really poor. And you know what kind of image they hold of themselves? I never have enough money. I'm always poor. Because that's the kind of image they hold for themselves. I hold images of myself of being very prosperous. What does prosperous mean? It doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with money. But I have a lot of friends worldwide. I start thinking about, well, wouldn't it be nice to have this building over here? And I start imaging that building being there, and before long, it's there. It's kind of interesting the way that happens. The first time I came to Australia, it was on the shortest day of the year here. And I came from Malaysia, where it's hot, but it was cold here. It's June, yeah. And I was walking around with a very, very thin robe. I didn't have anything but sandals, and my feet were really cold. So, as I was walking from one place to another, thinking it would be really nice if I had a pair of socks, I started imaging a pair of socks. When I finally got to a monastery that I was going to be staying at, the head monk gave me a pair of socks, which was very nice, and I much appreciated it. And by the end of the week of my staying there, I had a dozen pair of socks. And I started walking around going, I don't need any more socks. No more. That's it. And to this day, I have a lot of socks. Sometimes I'll go to one place or another, and then they'll give me a dozen pair of socks. Oh my. So imaging is a real important thing. What kind of image do you hold about yourself? Do you hold an image of being peaceful and calm? Whatever image you hold about yourself, that's what you become. So be in harmony with your imaging. The next part, or the next fold of the Eightfold Path, They call it right speech, but that's have you all turned off your cell phones? Anyway, they call it right speech, and that's very limiting. Because right speech, people only think about speech that comes out of their mouth. So I call this harmonious communication. Because it's more than just saying words. And using words. Harmonious communication, how harmonious is your communication with yourself? How much do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? How much do you have repeat thoughts about something that happened? Just like it's on a tape deck. Same words, same order, over and over again. Now, is that what you would call harmonious communication? No, actually it's not. Harmonious communication is appreciating yourself and holding thoughts of appreciation for other people, using words that are not harsh when you're talking. I know that there's a monk that he likes to use curse words when he's giving a Dhamma talk, and it's very offensive. That's not harmonious communication. Harmonious communication is the kind of communication where you are peaceful, calm, and giving. So the more you use speech that is kind and helpful to other people and kind and helpful to yourself, the more your mind is at ease. And it takes practice, because we like to beat ourselves up a lot. We like to criticize ourselves if we think we made a mistake. So it's real important to be able to recognize that and release it and relax and smile and keep mind light. Keep mind uplifted. One of the big problems that when I'm giving a retreat is people are so hard on themselves that they're really rigid. Their mind is just like a rock. And sometimes it takes a little while to get people to start letting go of that. Sometimes I have to give them forgiveness meditation because they are so hard on themselves, so critical. When I teach meditation, I generally teach loving kindness meditation so that you can have an uplifted mind, so you can have a light mind, so you start having more fun, you start having more joy arising in your mind, so that you become more alert. Now this is a kind of communication that I'm very interested in having students use. Harmonious communication of having fun with life, not getting critical, not getting caught up in dislikes and dissatisfactions. What kind of communication are you practicing? The lighter you can make your mind, the more fun you have with what you're doing while you're doing it, the better your mindfulness becomes. The better your mindfulness becomes, the lighter everything becomes. Your perspective starts to change. You don't get so caught up in heavy thoughts and feelings. And it takes practice. But this is part of the harmonious communication that you need to use towards yourself and other people. It's real interesting how critical we can be towards ourselves. And when you start becoming more and more aware of that, look at how much you're causing pain to yourself. Now, when I teach loving kindness meditation, one of the things that I very much want you to do is smile. How's the traffic jam? Can you smile? It's real interesting. Of course, I live in a place where if there's two cars at a stop sign, that's a traffic jam. So it's easy to keep smiling all the time. But when you get in a traffic jam, you know what other people are doing with their mind? Why don't you smile and wish them some happiness at that time? It's better than, oh geez, I'm not going to be able to make it. It takes so long. Oh, I hate this when it's like that. What kind of communication are you indulging in at that time? Is that what you would call harmonious communication? Not so much. For some reason or another, I haven't figured this one out why, but at a certain age, everybody starts to get serious. And I don't know why, but it seems to happen to everybody. And then when your expectations aren't met the way you want them to be met, what kind of harmonious communication do you take place? Do you indulge in? Liking and disliking, being hard on yourself, being hard on other people. Well, life is too short for that sort of thing. It's much better to have fun, to smile more, to dwell on happy things. That's what you would call harmonious communication, right? Not beating yourself up, not criticizing yourself because you think you made a mistake, which may or may not be true. The thing with the Buddhist meditation is the first part of meditation is practicing your generosity. And practicing generosity is not necessarily anything to do with material things. Saying something kind and make somebody else smile, isn't that practicing your generosity? And the more you can do that, the more it starts to come back to you. That's just the way karma works. So you have a tendency to be more happy as you start changing your perspective and start using a harmonious kind of communication with yourself and others around you. If you take a plant and you go up to it every day and you tell it how beautiful it is, how much you appreciate it, and touch it very kindly and give it a little bit of water, watch how fast that plant grows. Okay? In another spot, take a plant and tell it how much you don't like it. And watch see whether that plant grows or not. Now, there was a book that was called The Secret Life of Plants. It was written in the 70s. You can still get it today. It's a very popular book. And this guy hooked up a lie detector to plants to see if they would really respond to anything or not. And there was nothing that was happening. Every experiment he tried, it just didn't seem to work. Until he decided he was going to have a smoke, and he lit up a match, and the plant went wild. And it started to try to push away and move away from that. And he thought, oh, isn't that interesting? So what did he do? He took the cigarette and he burned some leaves. And he started cursing at the plant and telling it how bad it was. Every time he walked into the room, that plant got a lot of fear and tried to pull away from him. So he thought, that was pretty interesting. What happens if I am nice to a plant? So he got somebody else to come into the same plant, but anytime this person came in, used very nice speech, tell him how beautiful he was, give him some water, and when that person walked into the room, the plant started leaning towards that person. Now this, right after I read that book, I ran across a man that, he was a gardener, and he loved his tomatoes. And he would just hold his finger up like that, and the tomato would go.
Really?
Yeah. It took him three or 4 minutes for it to do that. But he really loved his tomatoes. I mean, it was sincere. So think about what kind of communication you have and how you can affect other people. Now, if something as simple as a plant can react like that, how about other people? A lot of people just think communication is with your voice, and that's not true. A lot of communication happens with your mind. As you start holding loving and kind thoughts to other people around you, they start responding to you in a little different way. And they start appreciating you, and you become more trustworthy. Now, this is one of the reasons that you want to keep your precepts without breaking them, especially your speech, your communication. I was telling somebody in another country the importance of not telling lies. And this man, he said, you know, I'm a salesman. I have to tell lies. And I said to him, what kind of reputation do you have? Do people trust what you say or not? Well, not really. Okay, what does that mean? I met a lady one time, and she had a little shop where she would make cassette recordings and copies and things like that. And she followed the precepts very, very closely. And she always had people in her store. No matter what time of the day I went there, somebody was there just talking with her. And her voice was amazing. It was very soft, and as soon as you heard her say anything, you trusted her. And she said, I did something the other day and I was shocked that it happened, but I went into a store and I was looking at some books and I just held on to this book and walked out the store. And she was very upset by that, and of course she went back in and she said, I'm going to pay you for this even though I don't want it. Because I don't want to steal anything. It makes me unhappy. So the whole thing comes down to keeping your communication harmonious with everything and everyone around you. And it takes effort to do that. It's not a simple thing. It's so much easier just to say, go away, leave me alone. The next fold of the Eightfold Path is called, they call it right action, which is kind of confusing. I've never been able to figure that one out. They've always said, well, right action means not killing anything and not taking anything that's not yours. But it's never really said what I think it should mean. See, the thing is, when the Buddha became enlightened and he went to these 5 monks, the first thing he did was talk about the Eightfold Path, right? Well, right action. Are these monks going to go out and kill something or steal something? No. It didn't mean anything to them. What is right action? I call it harmonious movement, because you don't jerk your mind around. Okay? When you're sitting in meditation, you softly recognize. You don't try to push. You don't try to force your mind to do something. And this is harmonious movement. It's moving your mind softly. The next fold of the Eightfold Path, I've always loved this one, is right livelihood. And the definition in the suttas of right livelihood is not selling weapons or poisons. Well, are those monks going to do something like that? Wait a minute, that's not right. So I call it harmonious lifestyle. What's your lifestyle like? What do you put in front of your mind? Remember, what you think and ponder on, that's the inclination of your mind. Your mind is going to incline towards what you think of most. I had a woman that came to me and she said, I'm having nightmares. And I said, oh, why? I don't know. Well, what are you doing? It seems like I have the worst nightmares after I go see a movie. Oh, what kind of movies do you like? Well, I love these horror movies. Oh, okay, well, then I would suggest you don't go see those kind of movies anymore. And she said, but I love them. And I said, well, don't come complaining to me about having nightmares. What kind of books do you read? What do you put in front of your face? What do you think about? That's the kind of lifestyle that you want to have be in harmony, in balance. So you see how this is so much different than write this and write that. If it's harmonious, that means that it's not black and white anymore, but you choose how to be in harmony with yourself. It's real important that you do this. Now the next fold of the Eightfold Path is really kind of interesting because they call it right effort. And I have found over the years that that is probably the most misunderstood part of the Eightfold Path. But I call it harmonious practice. What is harmonious practice? Recognize when something unwholesome arises in your mind. What is unwholesome? Anything that you're taking personally. Let go of that. Okay? Release it. That means don't keep your attention on the distraction. Relax. Let go of that tension and tightness in your head, in your mind. Now that's the first part of right effort. But I was taught for the first 20 years of my meditation life something very different. I was taught that whatever arises, note it until it goes away, and then come back to your the breath, whatever it happened to be. Now, when you do that, you are feeding that hindrance. You're feeding that distraction. I have a friend that's been practicing this kind of meditation for 50 years. To hear him give a talk in front of a few thousand people, you can hear fear in his voice. And that says to me that he still has some attachments in there. He's identifying with it. I've talked to him about it. He said ever since he started doing the meditation, way back in the 60s, anytime he got in front of other people, he had fear coming up. And over the years, he has, he still has the fear coming up, but it doesn't bother him so much anymore. Okay? And I said, well, thought if you're practicing the Buddha's path, you're supposed to let go of all of this stuff. What's happening? Why can't you let it go? I don't know. Now, he got into some Tibetan kinds of meditation and clinging to nothing. That's a great, don't say with your arms crossed. That's a great platitude. Sounds great, but how do you do it? It's like going to the Zen practice and saying, clear your mind. Tell me more. Wow, how are you supposed to do that? So that kind of platitude, it sounds really good, but it doesn't give you any practical advice on how to do it. When you recognize that, say, fear comes up, whose fear is it? It's a painful feeling, isn't it? Who doesn't like it? Who wants it to be different? So you need to have that relaxed step, but not keep your attention on the fear. It's only a feeling. If you keep your attention on the fear, that fear is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't stand it anymore. It's going to be an emergency. But when you follow a harmonious practice, that means that you don't keep your attention on it. It's just a feeling. Let it be there by itself and relax. Now, bring up something wholesome. Smile. Bring that smiling, light, pure mind that doesn't have any craving in it back to your object of meditation. And stay with your object of meditation as long as you can. That's right effort. That is harmonious practice. Now, every time you let go of that distraction and relax and smile and come back to your object of meditation, you are practicing the entire Eightfold Path at that time. So many people have an idea that the Eightfold Path is just some kind of philosophy that you kind of work with a little bit, but you really don't understand it very well. But think about it. When you practice letting go of that distraction, whatever it happens to be, that's harmonious perspective, isn't it? Because you've let go of identifying with whatever that distraction was. You're changing your image, harmonious imaging. You're practicing harmonious communication with yourself, and it can be with other people too. You're practicing harmonious movement. You're practicing harmonious lifestyle, and you're practicing harmonious practice. So you're doing the entire Eightfold Path every time you use the 6 R's. Recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, repeat. Okay, and the most important part of that is relax. Now, I've had some students that they had a hindrance come up, and they'll say, "This doesn't work." Why? What are you doing? Well, I have this hindrance and this anger, anxiety, whatever it happens to be, and I release, and I relax, and I release, and I relax, and I release, and I relax, and it doesn't go away. Well, one, the 6 R's aren't some kind of stick to use and beat things away. It's not going to work. And if you don't use the whole formula, why do you expect it to work? You can't just release and relax and expect it to push that hindrance away, that fear, that anxiety, whatever it happens to be. You have to smile. You have to bring that smile to an object of meditation that makes you happy, that makes you feel good. Okay? And stay with that for a bit. And smiling can be a perfect object of meditation. So, guess what? When you smile, you're practicing the entire Eightfold Path then. Aren't I a sneaky monk? Because I want you to smile and smile all the time. Why? Because you're practicing having an uplifted mind, everything is much easier, and you're practicing the Eightfold Path. There are some other folds in the Eightfold Path, and they go right along with this. After harmonious practice, you have harmonious observation. That's what a lot of people call right mindfulness, but so many people have no idea what mindfulness is. Everybody's supposed to know, right? And I've told this before. I was at a conference on mindfulness. After a day and a half of listening about mindfulness, I got up to give a talk and I said, okay, you've been hearing about mindfulness for a day and a half. Can anybody give me the definition of mindfulness? And there was 500 people in the room. And it was like a pin drop. You could hear it. No. Well, okay. Mindfulness is remembering to observe how mind's attention moves. Okay? You're on your object of meditation, or you're with something, and your mind gets distracted. Now, this is one of the classic things, especially for college students. They'll be reading right along, and all of a sudden, their mind is over there, and they're thinking about, oh, what happens if I don't pass this test, and how much distraction it has to be. So, their mindfulness is out the window. They're not paying attention to their object of meditation, which is reading and studying and grasping what it says. So how do we get rid of that problem? It only takes 2 or 3 minutes. Let it go, release it, relax, smile, be calm. Stay with the calm mind. Stay with the smiling mind. It's pretty easy. And once your mind calms down, then you come back to doing what you're doing. You're studying, you're trying to grasp the ideas of this. But if you get involved in your anxiety and your dislike of the situation and your worry about whether you're going to do well or not, you're going to keep being pulled away. But as you you start to see this is how mind is working, you have a choice, you have a decision you need to make. Either I'm going to stay involved in my worry and my anxiety, or I'm not, and I'm going to come back and start paying attention to what I need to pay attention to. I had a lot of college students when I was in Malaysia. They only take one test in a year. Cross your arms, please. One test. They're either going to pass or they're fail. That's it. So of course when it's time for the test, everybody's, oh, I gotta go see Bhante. I gotta calm down so I can pass my test. And they were pretty good about it. But they were mostly Chinese. And the Chinese are very ambitious. And they all have their parents behind them, pushing. You gotta do good. I won't let you do bad. So they had a lot of pressure on themselves because I only take one test a year, I better do good. So I taught them how to have fun and relax into things and stop making a big deal out of your worry and your anxiety. And all of them, as far as I know, did very well on their tests. I didn't go around asking, but there was 70 or 80 students that would come at different times to do this. So I found out that they actually liked taking the test because they knew it. They weren't caught up in their anxiety and things that pull their attention away. Now this has to do with mindfulness, doesn't it? How does mind's attention move? When you start seeing how it moves, you start recognizing more quickly and let it go more gently, more easily, and come back. Something that's always troubled me with people that are practicing meditation is they think meditation is just not moving. And that's a little part of meditation. And you have hindrances, right? And you have hindrances during the day, right? Well, when you're sitting in meditation, that's your quiet time, so you can recognize the hindrance when it comes, and you let go more easily. So when you have your daily activities, and a hindrance comes up, you'll recognize it more quickly, and you can use the 6 R's anytime. And you can smile all the time. It's up to you. So, practicing mindfulness, there's so many different definitions about mindfulness and so many different ideas about mindfulness. I ran across one teacher that says, mindfulness is remembering to remember to remember. What does that mean? I never did get an answer to that. But it's remembering to observe. Observe how your mind is acting. Gently, gently. Don't be jerking your mind around. When you have an emotional state that arises, your mind jerks around all over the place. And that's not harmonious movement. Just take it easy, relax, smile, laugh. Now, isn't that odd? Well, meditation isn't about laughing, is it? Can be. Why? Because it helps change your perspective. It helps change the way you see things. You go from I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm afraid. When you laugh, you go from I am that to it's only that. And when it's only that, it's just a feeling, it's just a thought. Do I want to carry this around with me? Nah, let it go. It's easy to let it go. So the more you can laugh with yourself about how crazy your mind becomes, the more uplifted your mind becomes, the better your mindfulness becomes. The easier it is to practice that Eightfold Path all the time. The last fold of the Eightfold Path is probably one of the most misunderstood parts, and that is right concentration. And I don't use the word concentration. I use the word collectedness, because concentration is very much misunderstood. You see things on the television, some athlete is doing something and you say, oh, look at his concentration, he's really focused. Well, it's more than that. And it's not that kind of focus. Rice Davies, who was the first person to put the Pali language into English, he was in Burma at the time. He was quite a scholar, and he was always talking to people about different aspects of the Buddha's teaching, so he could start working on a dictionary. And he found out that before the Buddha, there was never a word called Samadhi. The Buddha made this word up to describe a particular kind of collectedness that you have in your mind so that you can stay with what you're doing without much problem. Collectedness means a very composed mind, a very alert mind, and it can be quite quiet at times. But I won't say concentrated, although it is. Your mind can be very still and very much at ease. Sama means tranquil. Di means wisdom. So Samadhi means tranquil wisdom, not deep, one-pointed concentration. And you can develop this kind of collected mind with whatever you're doing while you're doing it. But have you ever noticed sometimes that you'll be reading a book and you're really into reading that book and you're really interested in it, and somebody walks up by you and they say, hey, oh, jeez, I didn't know you were there. Why does that happen? Because your concentration is too deep and your mindfulness is not good. When mindfulness and that collected mind come together and they're in balance, you have a mind that's very alert to whatever else is around, whatever happens, and you're not over-focused on just one thing. Now, the kind of meditation that's being taught today seems to be a lot more of the concentration type where your mind gets very focused, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what is the end result that you want to have with your meditation. I'm interested in the end result being having a lot of clear mind, a lot of happy mind, a mind that's very much awake. When the Buddha just started to describe these kind of things, he talked about nibbana. And nibbana is a real interesting word. And he always put that up on the high on the list. That's what I want to experience, nibbana. But ni means no, bana means fire. So anytime you have craving in your mind is hot. Anytime you use that relaxed step and the 6 R's, your mind becomes cool. So be cool. So there's a sutta in the I can't think of the name. The Mahavagga. It's rules of discipline for the monks. And one of the suttas there is called the Fire Sutta. And the Buddha had 1,200 monks that he was giving this sutta to, and he started talking about everything is burning. Burning with what? And he goes through the eyes and color and form and the eye consciousness and the contact and the feeling. And he said everything is burning with the fire of craving. So how do you let go of craving? Well, that's what that relaxed step is all about. When you let go of craving, you let go of the tendency to not be distracted. You let go of that mind that says, I am that. Okay? Now this is really important. And this is the whole purpose of doing the Eightfold Path, so that you can follow that path, so you can let go of the craving. And when you follow the Eightfold Path, you are also understanding completely how ignorance arises, how it's there, how to let go, and the Eightfold Path is the way you do that. So, the more you can relax into things, the more you can let go of taking things personally. And what do I mean by that? What happens? You have a physical body, you have feeling. Feeling is pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. You have perception. Perception and feeling are always together. Okay? Why? Because as soon as that feeling comes up, if it's pleasant, your mind says pleasant. If it's painful, your mind says painful. That's perception. That's the part of the mind that puts the name on it. Okay, that's the start of conceptual thinking. We only think in concepts. Another definition of Nibbana is experiencing no more concepts. A world without concepts, what's that like? It's going to be pretty quiet in there. No distractions at all. So, when you're letting go of your thoughts and your consciousness and your feelings and your perception, and you're allowing body just to be there by itself, your mind is experiencing Nibbana. Now that's not necessarily the super mundane Nibbana. Every time you let go of that tightness in your head, you're letting go of mundane Nibbana because you're letting go of craving, right? And that's mundane. And you got to do it a whole bunch of times before your mind finally gets the idea, oh, we don't want to hang on to this craving anymore. Now you're going to get some super mundane. I remember when I was on a Yahoo group that was really into the Dhamma. Boy, they were heavy duty. And I started talking about Nibbana and the mundane Nibbana and super mundane Nibbana, and I had 7 or 8 people write back to me very harshly saying, "What are you talking about? There's no such a thing as mundane Nibbana. Where did you hear that?" And I said, "I'm a monk. I study this stuff." "Well, I've never heard of that before." Well, now you have. Now you can start understanding more of the subtleties of the Buddha Dhamma. Now, there's also an interesting thing that happens as you start going deeper in your meditation. You start noticing that your mind starts to get balanced at some times. And it's real interesting. And it has to do with the awakening factors. They also call it the enlightenment factors, but I don't like to use the word enlightenment, because if I tell you something you don't know, I've enlightened you. Okay? But when you awake to the fact that this is in perfect balance, okay, now you've awakened. You're not sleeping anymore. You're not caught in delusion anymore. You're very much alert and awake. So I use the word awake instead of enlightened. And the awakening factors, there's mindfulness, being able to see how mind's attention moves whenever it does, or how it's still, when it's still. You have the awakening factor of investigating your experience. They have a lot of different words that they use, but this is probably the best way to look at it. They call it investigating the Dhamma, which, I mean, it sounds great, but not quite as precise as it would be. It's nice if it's more precise. So you investigate your experience. How do you investigate your experience? By using your next awakening factor, and that is energy. And you have to learn how to adjust your energy so you can see how mindfulness moves. investigating that. Mind's attention starts doing some little thing. How did that happen? Now you're investigating your experience. And you're adjusting your energy so that you can stay on that without being distracted. Now, energy is interesting because if you are with an object of meditation, whatever it happens to be, and you try to use a little bit too much energy and you start to have a restless mind. Okay? If you're trying too hard, you're trying to look a little bit closer and I really want to see this, well, that's time you need to back off. Or you don't try quite hard enough, now you're going to get dull. So you have to have that balance of energy. And in a sitting, you might have to adjust the amount of energy you use to stay with whatever you're investigating. You might have to adjust 3 or 4 or 5 times. Oh, I'm trying a little too hard now, let's back off. So the awakening factor of energy is like walking on the thinnest tightrope you've ever seen. It's like a cobweb. And if you try just a little bit too hard, you get back off. You have to relax some. Now, this has to do with some of the factors that are in mind. If you go into, let's say you're getting so that you're really quiet and your mind is really peaceful and you start thinking, I wonder how much longer I have to do this. And all of a sudden your mind is thinking this and thinking that, and it's all over the place. That is called longing. Now, one of the things I tell people that they need to do before they sit is tell themselves it doesn't matter what happens next. It doesn't matter at all. My job is only to observe. Now we're getting back to the mindfulness and the investigation and the energy. Because when you tell yourself, I don't care what happens next, the energy gets in nice balance. And when you have this kind of balance, you have a kind of joy that arises. This is called the awakening factor of joy. And this awakening factor of joy is like, it's a happy feeling, but it doesn't have a lot of excitement in it. It's just a nice, uplifted, happy feeling. And one of the things that happens with this is you'll be sitting and you have this really nice, happy feeling, everything's in nice balance, and all of a sudden your eyes pop open. Whoa, why did that happen? So you close your eyes, everything is really good, your eyes pop open. Try it again. Oh, okay, you want to stay open? I don't care. Okay, it's one of the weird things that happens with the awakening factor of joy. And you see a lot of Buddha images with the eyes half open. That's what the artist is trying to show you, that the Buddha was experiencing this kind of joy. And that's why some of the faces of the images, they just radiate a happy, joyful feeling. And that's what the artist is trying to get across. This is the perfect balance for mind. the next awakening factor is tranquility. Now, tranquility is really interesting. Anytime you have a hindrance of restlessness arise, if you bring up a feeling of tranquility, that restlessness will just fade away. So it's a real interesting kind of awakening factor that is very helpful for your meditation. The next awakening factor is the Samadhi, the collectedness of mind, the very composed mind that's very alert and very quiet. And the last awakening factor is equanimity, that perfect balance. Now the thing with equanimity, when you start meditating, you will have a little tiny bit. And as you go from one level to the next level to the next, the equanimity starts to get stronger and stronger and stronger. One of the things that happens when you start having good balance with all of your awakening factors is you start to get disenchanted with anything that arises. It's just, okay, there's something that I used to really like and now it's just there. I'm tired of it. No more. And your mind starts to get more and more equanimity. And this carries through to your daily life, where you don't have so much excitement of things happening. You don't have so much emotional upsets and stress. That's what the monk yesterday he was talking about stress a lot. But when you have this balance of mind, you handle whatever needs to be handled, but you don't get excited about it. You just, okay, let's take care of this. That needs to be taken care of now. Okay, there was an accident out there. Now I'm going to go sweep up all the glass and take it off the street. No problem. But you don't do it with excitement. So the equanimity starts to get finer and finer until it turns into dispassion. And that means there's no craving at all. Okay? And when these factors come into balance, no more craving, guess what happens? The cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. When you come back out of that, it'll be there for a little while. You don't know you're in it when you're in it. When you come out, you're going to feel extreme relief. Really nice. And if your mindfulness is sharp enough and you really are paying attention, you'll see these fast, little tiny movements that happen of mind's attention. And that turns out to be the links of dependent origination. And as soon as that's done, you're going to get happy. You're going to have joy arise. And it's going to change the way you see the world. Your perspective is going to change. Just you know that this is the right path. This is it. No question in my mind at all. This is the right thing. And you're going to know that taking or doing your chanting or rites and rituals of some kind, they're nice to do, but they don't lead to nibbana, so don't expect them to. And you're going to see very, very clearly that everything in this world is part of an impersonal process. It doesn't have anything to do with me, or my, or I. It just is conditions for things to arise, they arise. And there's a lot of relief in that. And the letting go of that whole process causes a lot of happiness to arise. The Buddha described it as giving up an ocean of suffering. You're still going to have your ups and downs in life, you're still going to have some emotional things, but you're going to catch them more quickly and not get so deeply involved in it. And you're going to see the things that you do to cause yourself suffering, how you take things personally and how you hold on to them. And you're going to go, well, I don't want to do that anymore, it hurts, let's let it go. Let's develop our sense of humor. Huh? There we go again. And when you laugh, you let go of that attachment. Again, guess what you're practicing? The Eightfold Path. That's the way to experience Nibbana. And smiling is part of the Eightfold Path, and using the 6 R's is part of the Eightfold Path, and laughing is part of the Eightfold Path, and living can be part of the Eightfold Path if you remember. But there's going to be times you forget. You can't come down on yourself because you forget. Right? Part of the Eightfold Path is what? Harmonious communication? Oh. So this is why developing your sense of humor is so very much important. Because it keeps everything in balance and it reminds you to practice staying with the Eightfold Path.